Hello students, today we will be starting with the chapter number 8, economic reforms. Now economic reforms. So what can we say about economic reforms? We can say that it is a process of systematically reducing policy regulations and excessive state imposed controls in economic functionings, for example decision related to investments, production or trade, etc. in our country, that is India. Economic reforms refer to the fundamental changes that were launched in 1991 with the plan of liberalizing the economy and for quickening its rate of economic growth. The Narasimha Rao government in 1991 started the economic reforms in order to rebuild internal and external faith in the Indian economy. In the year 1991, it is very important from our country, or for our country we can say, because as soon as the new government they started their office with that is on June 21, 1991, they adopted many policies, a number of stabilization measures to restore internal and external confidence in India's economy. They made many changes regarding the policies regarding foreign investment, trade, exchange rate, industries, banking and fiscal affairs. They also announced several new policies under the name New Economic Reforms of India, which gave a new direction and dimension to our Indian economy. Now, objectives of economic policy reforms since 1991. So the main forms we can say, that is, it was to reduce the extent of public sector in the mixed economic system, which is known as the economic reforms. And the main objectives are encourage private and foreign investment. That is, to increasingly encourage private and foreign investment in order to utilize India's abundant natural and human wealth in the process of economic development in a more productive manner, we can say. Next one is allocation of natural resources. Whatever the natural resources are there, how it should be allocated. So it should be used in very optimum and efficient manner. Restrict expenditure of state. Now, to restrict the expenditure of the state and channelize the resources recovered from disinvestment in public enterprise toward increasing utilities which enhance the welfare of the people, we can say. Next one is increase income of country. So that is to increase the domestic income or the employment or export income of the country. Next one is increase competitiveness. So increase competitiveness of whom? So increase competitiveness of our Indian economy. And next one is steady economic growth and development. Now, to ensure economic growth and development of Indian economy in long run, we have fulfilled three objectives, that is systemic reforms in economic policy that were initiated in 1991, which were having main three components, that is LPG, which we commonly pronounce liberalization, privatization and globalization. So here are the three main components which were initiated, that is liberalization, privatization and globalization. Now, the fundamental feature of the new economic reforms in India was that it offered freedom to the entrepreneurs to establish any trade or industry or any business venture, we can say. So economic liberalization means freedom to make economic decisions. In other words, if we talk about, that is the producers, owners or consumers of the factor of productions, they are free to take their own decisions in order to promote their interest. Liberalization and process of liberalization. Now, if we go by the definition of liberalization, so it is a process which increases the scope of private enterprises, private sectors, say in economic functioning, market-oriented decision making by relaxing the policy regulations regarding the same. Apart from it, during the process of liberalization, or in process of liberalization if we talk, so there was a gradual decline in the controls imposed by the state in economic functioning. The role of the market forces of demand and supply increases in economic decision making. Next, the private sector is systematically allowed to enter the investment areas reserved for the public sector, and protection granted by the state to domestic industries against foreign competition is systematically reduced. Process of liberalization. So liberalization in India, it was implemented as a gradual process. First of all, initially the investment rules were simplified for the producers of our country, or domestic producers and investors we can say, and subsequently for foreign investors. Same way, initially the consumer goods sector was opened up for investment by foreign companies, and after that the service sector, and later on the financial sector. So we can say that it was a strategic liberalization process. Further, the government also freed the capital markets and opened them to the private enterprises. Also, it permitted foreign equity participation of up to 51% or more. Additionally, the government delicensed the industrial sector and abolished the MRTP, that is Monopolies and Restricted Trade Practices Act. Further, the government also allowed foreign investment to enter the infrastructure sector. Finally, the policy amended FERA, that is Foreign Exchange Regulation Act, and enacted the Foreign Exchange Management Act, that is FERA and FEMA. So some of the key points which we can highlight, that is MRTP Act was replaced by the Competition Act. So MRTP Act was replaced by the Competition Act, that is Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act. Now in year 1969, this act was preventing enterprises from growing very big and establishing monopolies. Competition Act. So in 2002, this act replaced MRTP and was aimed at reducing unhealthy competition among enterprises. Next one is FERA was replaced by FEMA. So the word regulatory was removed from FERA, that is, and it was replaced by the word management. That is Foreign Exchange Regulation Act 1973. It was the act regulating foreign exchange earnings and transaction of enterprises. Whereas FEMA, that is Foreign Exchange Management Act in 1999. So this act was managing foreign exchange earnings and transaction of enterprises instead of regulating. It was managing instead of regulating them. Major changes were made in the industrial policy. So many changes were made, like opening up for the private sector, the areas reserved for investment only by the public sector. So now if we talk, so only 3 sectors are reserved for the public sector, that is atomic energy, some minerals related to atomic energy, and railways. And railways also now they are trying to privatize. Another noteworthy change was raising the investment limit in the definition of small scale unit, so that with the higher investment a small scale unit can adopt the modernization. Next come procedure for foreign investment became more investor friendly. That is, in many sectors automatic licensing route was introduced for investment by foreign companies in our country. Next one is relaxation in industrial policy, and relaxation in import-export rules were announced. So apart from this, the foreign exchange were allowed to be converted at market rates instead of the earlier method of convertibility only at the official rate. Now it was allowed that whatever the market rate is prevailing, at that rate we can exchange. And expenditure on subsidies was attempted to be reduced as part of the fiscal policy. Now another important concept or another important feature of new economic reforms in India was extension of privatization. In simple words, if we say, privatization is a process which helps to reduce the role of the state or the public sector in the economic activity of a country. Or we can say that it is a process of transferring ownership of economic enterprises from public sector to private sector. Either it is partially or fully. Either fully it is converted into private sector or partially it is done. Now, the primary objective of Privatization is improving the overall performance of the public sector undertakings. This is especially beneficial to the taxpayer as it reduces the financial burden on them. Now, as a part of privatization, what the government did? The government gave 11 industries to the private sector, and these were out of the total 17 industry which was reserved for the public sector. Apart from it, further the government offered better opportunities for investment to the foreign private sectors and extended the scope of privatization. Now, privatization, if we talk about, so it can take place in following two ways, that is through disinvestment and by reducing the number of areas which is reserved for investment only by the public sector and opening them up for investment by the private sector. And next is partnership, that is by establishing public-private partnership business. Now, what do you mean by disinvestment? So, we can say that disinvestment means a process where the state reduces its share of investment in a public enterprise, or they draw back its investment completely by selling its shares to the private sector. So, this process is called that disinvestment, or we can say the process by which the state disinvests from public enterprises, that is called disinvestment. Now the process includes sell all the shares of the state in a public enterprise to the private sector, which is called complete disinvestment, and second one is sell some shares of the state in public enterprise to the private sector. So first one case, some shares it is sharing, that is we can say like 29 or 49%, which is called partial disinvestment. If they are transferring if less than 51% shares to private sector, then it is called minor disinvestment. And if more than 51% shares they are transferring to private sector, then it is called major disinvestment. Besides owing to public sector, the state also holds control over certain areas of investment like strategic importance and public utility services. They were not open for investment by the private sector. However, after the privatization in 1991, most of these areas they were open for investment by the private sectors. For example, like education, communication, banking sector, transportation sector. So they are now open for private as well as foreign investment. Now we only have atomic energy and some minerals related to atomic energy and railways, which are reserved for public sector. After independence, there was significant rise in the number of public sector enterprises under the central government. But if we talk about the after 1991, so there was not much rise during that period. Next one is globalization. So globalization means it is the process of increasing a country's economic integration with the rest of the world by increasing trading goods and services, or we can say that is increasing movement of the financial capital, increasing change of technology and increasing investment between borders. It can be undertaken by gradually decreasing the policy controls which served as impediments to foreign trade. Now, what was the process of globalization in India? So, the process of globalization, it includes certain points. The economic reforms in India or country's economy is outwardly oriented. So globalization, we can say it is basically a process of increasing the economic integration of growing economy interdependence with different countries in the world economy. We can also say that the process of economic liberalization and privatization of the public sector enterprises eventually it led to the globalization of the Indian economy. That is globalization. It is flow of capital or commodities or any new technology and labor across the national boundaries from one country to another, we can say. So as a result of globalization, both domestic and world markets started governing the economic activities in India. Now, process of globalization. So that include export-import policy was made easy and in simple term, we can say. Second is India became member of WTO. That is World Trade Organization. So India became a member of World Trade Organization in year 1995. That means it is abiding by its rules of free world trade. Next one is convertibility of Indian rupee into other currencies. So introducing convertibility of Indian rupee into other currencies at market rate by gradually reducing conversion at the official rate. Now whatever the exchange is done, that is the current market rate which is prevailing. Thus value of our currency is determined by trade. Increase in foreign direct investment or FDI, we can say. So increase in foreign direct investment or sector-wise and systematic increase in foreign direct investment, we can say. Investors and producers in India were allowed to increase financial collaboration with their foreign counterparts. And last one is social and cultural ties with other nations were also encouraged. So investors and producers in India, they were allowed that they can increase their collaborations with the foreign countries. State became more indifferent in policy matters between, that is, domestic and foreign investors and producers. So that is undue protection for Indian investors against foreign competition was lifted. Foreign investment in India. Now if we talk about foreign investment in India, it is mainly divided in two types, that is foreign institutional investment, that is FII, and FDI, that is foreign direct investment. So foreign investment, it became an important component of the process of globalization, because under a relatively closed and controlled economy, access foreign exchange needs of Indian economy for purpose of any kind of investment or any import of any essential goods and services, or if you want to do import any new technology, so were made by borrowings from the international organization and foreign government. As there were several controls on foreign investment, we have to buy more goods and technology from abroad, for which we needed more foreign exchange. But after 1991, India allowed direct investment in certain areas in increased proportion. So such investment would decrease our dependence on foreign borrowings as investment by efficient foreign companies, and it will generate employment in our country. We can produce variety of goods, raise tax income and bring new technology in our country. So two types of foreign investment, that is foreign institutional investment. So if we talk about foreign institutional investment, there are some foreign companies which do not invest in plant and machinery in other country. For example, say India. What do? They invest in funds, in financial institutions and bond, stock or share market in another country. They buy stocks from the bond share market in that country. So such investment is called foreign institutional investment or portfolio investment, we can say. Now in India, they can invest only up to a limit which is specified by the rules. They have no direct stake in the management of the home company. Hence financial capital comes to the home country through the stock market. But if we talk about its drawbacks, so we can say that this type of investment comes to the home country in a very short span of time, when foreign companies buy shares of home country in large amount, and it can also leave the home country in an equally very short span of time, when the foreign companies, they sell the home country share in bulk. So hence funds take a flight in and out of the country very easily and fast process. So thus this type of investment is considered to be very risky and unstable kind of foreign capital. Second one is the foreign direct investment. So foreign direct investment, what happens when the home country it invites capital by allowing foreign investor or any foreign company to produce and sell directly in India. So such type of investment is called foreign direct investment. Now in foreign direct investment, what the companies do, they set up their business in our country, that is in our country India, by constructing their own plants and bringing new technology and produce the goods by collaborating with Indian companies. So these companies either manage the entire business or they have in management. So they are collaborating partners, we can say. So the main difference, that is in foreign institutional investment, they invest in funds like financial institution, bonds, stock and share market. As in FDI, they invest directly in the business plan, technology and collaborate with the Indian counterparts or Indian companies. Now nature of foreign direct investment. So it is a physical establishment in the form of direct investment and hence stable form of investment. Second is it brings machines, materials and wealth to the home country. Third one is it brings new technology to the country, because here the company is not investing in technology but in FDI they invest. So they will bring the new and latest technology for producing goods. It brings a different work culture along with it. Stages of India's foreign trade. It is divided into, that is India's foreign trade policy before globalization and India's foreign trade policy after globalization. So if we talk about what is India's foreign trade policy, so that is the policy which regulates India's trade with other country, that is called foreign trade policy. How the goods will be traded or how will trade with the other countries, that is called foreign trade policy. Now we faced many challenges for that. For example, we need to control certain imports in order to protect domestic production from competition by foreign goods, because if foreign country will set up, then what about our domestic production? If it will not be sold in the market, it is a loss for our country's companies. Ensure enough imports of technology, machines, spare parts as well as resources to help increase domestic production and import substitution. Next one is control import of goods unessential for India's development in order to safeguard foreign exchange. Means whatever thing is genuinely needed or it is very essential or for utmost importance, that only thing we should import. If any unessential item is there, then we should keep a track on it. We should not spend our foreign exchange for such unessential items. Then encourage exports to earn foreign exchange in order to pay for necessary imports. Next one is many Indian goods could not compete against the quality of foreign goods and hence increasing export was a challenge for trade policy. Now that time we used to talk or we used to compare between the Indian manufactured goods and foreign companies' product. So the quality of foreign goods was far better than the Indian producers. So how to manage that? It was a challenge for our trade policy, because if we'll buy foreign goods, then our export will be decreased. So how to increase our export with that quality or to compete against the foreign quality product? That was a challenge for our trade policy. How to increase the export? Next is to promote export of goods produced by small scale sectors. Next one is the challenges of foreign trade are different from those of domestic trade, as foreign trade involves foreign exchange. So the foreign trade policy of India was formulated and the changes were made from time to time to deal with the above challenges in the best possible manner it can be done.